Daniel Demeke, Managing Director, Ethiopian MRO Services. Welcome, Daniel. Round of applause. Mr. Laeke Tadesse, President, Ethiopian Aviation University. Mr. James Danga, Safety Expert, African Civil Aviation Commission. Welcome. And from the Latin America side, we have Mr. Santiago, Valencia, Rodríguez, Head of Maintenance and Supply Chain, ALTA. And a very important stakeholder, the African Union Commission. Join me in inviting Mr. Ntagengerwa, who is joining us for this panel as well, from the African Union Commission. I hand it over to you, moderator, to take us through the panel.
Testing. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me recognize the protocols that I see around. SG, we thank you, the African Airlines Association, for making this platform possible. As an opening remark, let me say that we have directed ourselves as a panel to stay away from discussing things that have been discussed already. As you can see from the title, how can African airline MROs cooperate? So we are going to tackle straight into what the panelists feel are the solutions. Those of you who are familiar with the Yamoussoukro Declaration, now decision, will be aware that we spent years and years discussing things that we already knew. I do believe that our MROs do know the problems. We have discussed the solutions. We know them. What we are here to do is to propose, it's like a menu in the restaurant, picking those things that we think are relevant. Thank you for that. So to help me do that this morning, you have heard the panelists being introduced, and I won't go into that. So let me open off by saying that Africa today already has EASA and FAA certified MRO capability. These are the primary certifying organizations. The aeroplanes that we operate today, Boeing's, Airbus, Embraer, and even the Chinese who are coming on the market now, are going by those standards. So the issue is no longer capability, because there is already demonstrated capability on the African continent. The issue is scale, access, and cross-border utilization. Today, our African MROs still face fragmented regulatory environments, limited mutual recognition of certifications, barriers which we had yesterday being discussed with the panel ably led by Mr. Konate, to operating seamlessly across our borders. This means, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we are not yet operating as a single aviation maintenance market. Our focus as a panel today is a practical approach to what will be done, not what can be done. We have the states represented, we have the MROs represented, so it is going to be, we walk away and say what will be done. We have already talked about what can be done in various panels. How do we enable African MROs to operate across borders efficiently, safety being the #1 primary consideration for any operator, for the airline industry, and competitively, because we are in business. I laughed yesterday when I had a conversation that one MRO went to the other to borrow a part, couldn't get, but they seem to have forgotten that both of them were in business. So we need to be competitive as we discuss those issues. So straight away to you, the question #1, Daniel. And the way we have structured is that we're going to take one question for each panelist to go across so that you are not bored with one voice. And then we'll come with the second question. Then we'll do a round-up question for each panelist. Daniel, as the managing director for the largest MRO on the continent, there's no secret about that. Your organization is already globally certified at the level of EASA and FAA and automatically recognized by the Ethiopian CAA. What are the biggest barriers that you as an organization face when you try to extend your services across the African borders?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peter. Good morning, distinguished guests, partners, colleagues. For Ethiopian MRO, the challenge that extending the service across the borders of the continent is with different factors, but just to mention some, it is more consolidated on the structural, the regulatory framework, and the market challenges that we are encountered in our daily activities on supporting the aviation sector across the continent, sometimes to the Middle East and beyond. So just to focus on the African market share of the MRO side, as you said, the barrier are not about the capability as much as the complexity. So now, to mention some of the factors, the first thing is the fragmented regulatory environment. So many times we discussed about these similar topics starting from yesterday on different panels, but still I want to mention it again because it is very much important. The lack of the MRAs, the Mutual Recognition Agreement, the lack of the MRA in African MRO environment, it is really affecting the ecosystem heavily. With that, with the separate approval of the civil aviation between the 52 countries of the MRO business that, for instance, for Ethiopian MRO delivered to them, the mutual recognition of the regulatory framework is really affecting us. For instance, if I have to send an AOG technicians from my MRO, which is most of my engineers and technicians are certified with Ethiopian Civil Aviation, then I need to ask another second recognition from that civil aviation that I'm going to offer the service. So that is one of the challenges that I want to say it. So the fragmented regulatory environment gap is really a very serious one. So the mutual recognition agreement, it has to be improved. Otherwise, the job can be done, but there will be always lingering of the situations on due course of applying the recognition process of the certification. The second point that I consider very much important is the customs, logistics, and supply chain bottlenecks. By what I mean these customs, logistics, and supply chain bottlenecks is that MRO really depends heavily on the fast movement of the parties between the MROs as well between 2 points of the continent that the situation happens, for instance, on scheduled maintenance or whether it is AOG or not. So unless the movement of the parties across different points of the continent is not easy, then the challenge will be there. So AOG aircraft will be somewhere, then sometimes when I say that a logistic issue, it's not, I'm talking about it's a day. Sometimes it may take like a week or two. So that has to be, really must be addressed if we really want us to improve the integrity of the MRO services across the continent. The third point that I want to mention is these infrastructural gaps. In most of the airports that the service might be required, that you cannot have it more than the ATC communication equipment, or sometimes if it is lucky enough, it might be only the ground power and a headset. It is really very, very much difficult to have it a hangar that encompasses some narrow body or wide body aircraft so that the repair or the heavy maintenance is going to be addressed. So The infrastructure gap, it is one of the very serious situations. For instance, if something is happened in the west part of the Africa, then if it requires a hangar facility, then if there is no any kind of approved hangar facility, then you have to, you must be forced just to fly that aircraft with a non-technical objection of approval from the OMS, then to the place where the aircraft can be positioned for the MRO that has got a facility, an approved facility. That is the main gaps. Just to add one more gaps, this is the skilled workforce shortage is also one of the issues. So there are some other points, but these are the main factors that I can consider.
Thank you. And I do believe that those who are affected on the panel have picked the point from there when we come to you to address some of those issues. Ms. Laeke, we are seeing you for the second time, and, but now from a different perspective. You as the Ethiopian training entity, Ethiopian Aviation University, how does regulatory fragmentation, which we have just heard from Daniel, affect the mobility of licensed aircraft maintenance engineers across the continent? Thank you.
Morning again. Thank you, Peter. So basically, when we consider MRO capability, the most significant component of it is personnel, the certified licensed technicians and engineers that perform the task. So the utilization of these resources cross-border would mean they need to be accepted or approved in every country they operate. So the current challenge we have in our continent, at least, is there is a rigorous bureaucratic process where one has to go once they get their training at an approved training organization for their license to be accepted on the place of work. What mostly happens is the regulators from that civil aviation entity will have to visit an already approved training organization to do their own evaluation, which is costly, time-taking, to accept and certify the maintenance engineer's license. So this would mean, one, lack of confidence as to what kind of process one would go in order to work where those sort of MRO facilities are available, adding cost in terms of that, and in general limiting mobility. We want personnel to be dispatched quickly or relocate for some sort of permanent task, and the certification regime has to be seamless, because basically we all are trying to adopt the global standards, the ICAO standards. ATOs become EASA or FA certified in the trainings they offer. So harmonization of these standards and incorporating in the national regulatory framework would go a long way in terms of improving the mobility of our aircraft maintenance engineers. So today there is a big challenge whereby a very hectic and bureaucratic process is followed in order to endorse one's certificate secured at a location where the ATO is an approved entity by the local CA and additionally regional and global accreditors as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much again to the panelists. We have picked those things. In our next round, let's deal with some of those issues. Representing the African regulators, we have you, James. from the Civil Aviation Commission. From a continental perspective, what is the biggest obstacle preventing mutual recognition of MRO certifications among African states? Over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chikumba. Yes, from a continental perspective, there are two key obstacles that we can talk about. I'm happy to say that they've already been mentioned. The first one, of course, is the regulatory fragmentation. And I would just like to comment about that a little bit more to say, for example, you know, we have got 54 African member states in Africa. And in terms of EI, ICAO effective implementation to the standards and recommended practices, we have got diverse status of implementation in Africa. You will be surprised. For instance, the highest performing state in Africa at the moment is about 93%, the top of the range in the world. And sadly, at the same time, in Africa, we also have as low EI as 7%. So you can imagine the diverse status of implementation from the lowest level of implementation in Africa to the highest in the world. So that alone speaks to the aspect of fragmentation. Where do we even begin? 54 regulations that we are not even really complying with. So I'm going to speak to that after this discussion in terms of solutions that we can proffer at a continental level. If you have got that level of fragmentation in terms of implementation and in terms of the regulations, what can we do for mutual recognition of MROs? Number two, it has been spoken about, its capacity. The MROs in the African continent, do they have capacity in terms of human resource development? Today, yes, a certain MRO may have all the engineers that they need because they train. Yesterday, you heard one of the executives saying you need at least 66 years to train somebody from school to a fully fledged licensed aircraft maintenance engineer. 6 years. So now, already we hear that there is war in the Middle East. And that war will come to an end eventually, very soon. And you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, they are going to be robbing our own engineers from Africa. It appears is the soft spot. So in that kind of instances, do our MROs have to wait to train for 6 years for aircraft maintenance engineers? Do we have that kind of capacity? So these are some of the challenges that we do have. So we need to establish a system whereby we make common training so that our engineers can be taken from other African member states. If you have got an Embraer 145 licensed aircraft maintenance engineer in Namibia, can he be recruited today to go and work across the continent in Senegal on an Embraer 145 MRO? So these are the kind of aspects in terms of capacity that we have to think about. Our MROs, are they well capacitated to recruit as fast as they can, sourcing even from other African member states? The other aspect, before I forget, is independence from our MROs. Our MROs, are they independent from their national airlines? If I have an MRO here in Ethiopia, is it affiliated to Ethiopian Airlines? If I'm somewhere in Zimbabwe there, will I be confident to send my aircraft to Ethiopian MRO, having confidence that it will be prioritized when maintenance is required? So those kind of independent aspects need to be also taken into consideration when we are thinking about mutual recognition of MROs in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. We are privileged to have somebody outside our continent from South America. Those of you who are politically minded, it's also a third world region. So let's hear from Santiago in terms of what in the ALTA region you have faced. So from a Latin American experience, what has worked in enabling cross-border aviation cooperation that Africa can realistically adopt? Santiago? Button just above the red.
Hello? Yeah, well, sorry. Well, to share our Latin American experience here, I think can be proved fruitful because we actually have already set up what we call the Latin American Aviation Regulation, the LARS, which are in essence regulations that are followed throughout the region and that have as a reference the FAA or EASA standards. To give you a little bit of context, this was born in 1998, so that's 28 years ago. It's been a process that's been developed throughout these past 3 decades. It started as a joint coordination between ICAO and the Latin American Civil Aviation Commission. And throughout this time, what they've managed to do is create some kind of alignment regarding the ICAO annexes, regarding the general standards that the FAA and the EASA also point out to. And we, in the region, what we did was we created the specific task force to develop those regulations. So we're speaking about the SRV SOP, which is a regional safety oversight committee or system that integrates, as I was saying, that, and which essentially takes what needs to be taken from the forest, for instance, and just as the FAA has the FAR 145 for maintenance, we have the LARS 145 for maintenance. Licenses, as again, FAR 61, we have the LARS 61. And it brings some common language towards general discussion throughout the territory. As I was saying yesterday, Latin America, at the end of the day, has a lot of similarities with the African region. We're not that many states, but still we have very specifically identifiable regions. So we have the Caribbean region, for instance. We have the Andean regions regarding the Andean mountain range. We have the Mercosur, which is Brazil, Argentina, and Chile on the southern part. But even having those regions and their particular interests, we managed to get together around it. What benefits do they bring? At the end of the day, MROs get some efficiencies out of audits, for instance. So you do not have to be audited in every single country to be certified under each country's authority, but rather have like a multinational trust certificate and understand that well, you're certified under each particular CAA. You also get the common grounds through which you can create business for the region. So yesterday we were speaking about how much value is being driven out of Africa, you know, how much of your money ends up in other regions' pockets. And through the creation of this kind of common grounds is what, as my fellow panelists were saying before, you can start creating mechanisms, businesses, to actually get that value and make it stay home, which is pretty much what I would suggest this should follow through. And of course, as Daniel was also saying, it's about its regulatory alliances. It's about regulatory predictability. I guess is a good word to understand what you can have as a region. So that's what we've been looking for so far. To do an analogy with what used to be there, and also as a suggestion for you to follow, I believe you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you have a clear reference with FAA, with EASA. They've been producing aircraft, they've been producing components. They have a very specific worldwide acceptance of safety. Just go after it, just as we did. Just use them as the reference, just as in previous years. You know, in ancient times, ships wanted to navigate using a reference point as the Northern Star. I'd suggest use FAA and the EASA standards as that northern point, that Northern Star to navigate your way to it. So yeah, I think, one last point, sorry. It's not done yet. I mean, it's been 30 years on the making. We are currently implementing it. We are currently making it happen. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect state. We're developing it.
Thank you, Santiago, for learning. Now, I heard him talking about LAS. I guess that's because it's Latin America. So FAS could mean, from AFAS, from African. So let's be thinking about some of the things that we can consider copying from them. Eric, from the continental, the political side, there's been talk of the political will to make things happen. Let's hear from your end as the head of transport and mobility from the African Union. Africa has strong policy frameworks, and we heard it yesterday. We're not short of policies, we're not short of people, we're not short of money even. Where is the biggest gap between continental policy and actual implementation of MRO collaboration? Over to you, Eric. You can pass him yours. Yours is on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Program Moderator. Thanks for the opportunity from the AUC. Maybe just to add on what my colleagues mentioned to gain time, and also maybe tackle on the solutions as you advised before. Adding to what AFCAC, my colleague from AFCAC mentioned, I wanted to bring in two aspects. Yes, as you said, we have a regulatory framework under SATAM. We have regulations when it comes to safety, oversight, and security. We have AFCAC working very hand in hand with the states to harmonize these regulations. This is on the policy side. We also have the regional safety oversight organizations, which are doing quite well, of course, with some diverse capacity in terms of putting together the states. So I wanted to add two main concerns here. James mentioned a bit on the regulatory side when it comes to the state level. I wanted to mention the gap also at the regional level when it comes to the oversight, when it comes to the role of the regional safety oversight organization. So there is, as mentioned by James, there is a subset of African states that meet international safety oversight. Others do not meet. So when there is that differences, it leads to the uneven credibility of the civil aviation authorities. So an aircraft which was maybe approved in one country may be needed to be reapproved or rechecked again in another authority instead of having one certification aspect. So the gap here I see is that some RISOs, let me give an example of the ESC CASOA, have been able, for example, to put in place one common examination system where they have already regulation that harmonized, and they have one common examination system where all maintenance engineers within that region can be able to go to the same system, apply, and get the certificates. So in that sense, with a common examination system, you are able to recognize and to agree and to have that mutual trust between the civil aviation authorities within the one region. But the gap I see is that in other regions, we don't see something coming up when it comes to the role of the RISOs. Because when the states is not meeting the standards, but the RSOs should be able to come in and support the states, and even bring those who are stronger to support the others who are weaker in terms of meeting that. So that RSO upgrading and strengthening is a critical gap that I see we can resolve. The second point that my colleague did not mention, I think, is the weak coordination and protectionism. I want to mention this because it comes not only on MRO, it affects us whenever there is a cross-border collaboration in implementing existing policies. As you say, the policies are there, but when it comes to implementing at cross-border. So what happened is that there is a limited cooperation which has a protectionist attitude for shared infrastructure and cross-border services. So that protectionism is also going to affect our second discussion on mutual recognition agreements. Because before you talk of agreement and mutual recognition, there have to be a mutual trust. So the mutual trust will not be there if there is that protectionism. I think James mentioned about countries that have EI, which is almost equal to the highest globally. So why can't we look at those countries which are already doing well on safety? If they have the MRO system, it means they also have the capacity, the oversight capacity. Why can't we, other African states, use those MROs which are already trusted globally? Why do they have to go out of the continent? So there is that element of protectionism which makes the country still wanting to even create their own MROs, and they don't have the capacity to oversight in terms of the safety. So those are the two aspects I think my colleague did not mention, and which I see we can tackle in the next stage of discussion on how we can resolve that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. I hear you saying that in the next days. Unfortunately, it won't be in the next days. That's what we're going to do now in question number 2. We needed to get the appetite of where we are. We cannot determine where we are going to go without knowing where we are. So what you heard from each panelist were the challenges, what is prohibiting us from moving forward as a continent. The next round now is each panelist within 2 minutes is going to give us their solution, their proposed solution. That's what we've got to take from this conference. So if I can start with you, Daniel, what specific form of mutual recognition or regulatory alignment would immediately unlock greater utilization of African MRO capacity that exists today?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Peter. To unlock the great utilization of the already existing MRO, the approved MRO facilities, I think we need to categorize the solutions from the MRO perspective on the recognition of the approval, on the license of the AML, the AML recognition, aircraft maintenance license recognition of the engineers and the technicians, and the third one that I want to mention is to standardize the airworthiness and the certification of the certification approval from the repair station. So when you consider the approval recognition, I think we need to work straight away. It may take like a year or 5 or 10, but we need to work to do the African Part 145 kind of approval. So for that, I can see that a very positive message from the AFCAC rep here. From the support that the African Union give a hand to the AFCAC, then if you have the approval with that, and if we can develop in due courses of the years for the Part 145 kind of approval in Africa, a lot of cost will be saved, a lot of TAT will be reduced, then the existing MRO can be utilized effectively so that without adding any facility and making the thing very efficient, then we can generate the wasted MRO facility because of unnecessary redundant kind of approval. And Similar things that I can say for the ML recognition and for the standardized airworthiness release certificate, so that we can have an efficient maintenance service specifically for heavy maintenance and engine overhaul. Today, most operators can do the line maintenance, so that will not be an issue if those approvals can be done separately at each national level. But when you talk about the heavy maintenance and engine overhaul, definitely the facility available in our continents are limited. So we need to first use those limited facility effectively while we streamline our regulatory bodies and some gaps that could be improved. Second, after that, we can generate additional facility while we are using the existing one effectively. Thank you, Dr. Peter.
Thank you, Daniel, for that, and I hope we have all taken note of that. Mr. Laeke, on human capital, what practical steps can training institutions today take to ensure African certified personnel are recognized and employable across multiple jurisdictions?
Thank you, Peter. Hearing my colleagues speak, I feel that there is hope. At least some of the groundwork has already been done in terms of putting in place the necessary policies and even a practice in some regions of having a common examination system and things like that. So what I would hope to see would be among the different training institutions that work on aviation professionals, the adoption of best practices as recommended by ICAO in terms of putting in place standardized curricula whereby effectiveness of training can be measured with the same standard, and at least trying to work on a regional basis to ensure that acceptance starts between regions and push it to continental level gradually, would go a long way in terms of availing the scarce resource of trained aviation maintenance engineers, where the demand is high in terms of underutilizing those resources. This would be what I would want to see maybe in the next few years in terms of the aviation professionals development pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laeke, for that. And over to you, James, on the practical end of what can be done. What concrete initiative can AFCAC drive in the next 2 to 3 years to enable cross-border acceptance of certified MRO certifications today?
Thank you. So, in order for us to address the aspect of regulatory fragmentation that we talked about, we need to take a pragmatic step. Just last year, AFCAC, in collaboration with 54 African member states, we presented a working paper on mutual recognition of maintenance organizations. And in this working paper, we recommended that there must be, at policy level, continental level, there must be a mutual recognition agreement signed by member states that are in collaboration for those purposes. And this MRA should address all the issues that we talked about on regulations and compliance. But the question, obviously, that comes to mind is, should it address the 54 regulations? Senegal, Zimbabwe, Namibia, South Africa, Ethiopia, South Sudan, all those. Should we necessarily do that? Not necessarily. In that MRA, we only need to address 2 key aspects that Dr. Chikumba mentioned concerning our aeroplanes, EASA and FAA. Those are the only 2 that matter. So if we address those as the fundamental standards that the MROs should adhere to, and that become the basis for mutual recognition, then everything else is resolved. So if we take that pathway to use only those two as a basis for mutual recognition of MROs, then I'm sure the aspect of fragmentation from the 54 African member states is well taken care of. So that goes also to address the aspect of capacity that I talked about in terms of human resources. Again, we endeavor to comply with those FAA and EASA requirements on aircraft being manufactured from Boeing, of course, EASA, Airbus, and we want to make sure that the training curriculum addresses those standards in our MRAs. And as long as we do that, we would have addressed sufficiently the aspect of mutual recognition of MROs. And the aspect of independence as well that I talked about. Again, at policy level, we need to have a governance structure that addresses the aspect of independence of these MROs. And as long as we do that, I'm sure we'll be able to address the concerns that we raised earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, if you come on board now for this last question, what actionable, and the emphasis on actionable, we have debated enough, step can the African Union at the continental level take to move from policy alignment to operational mutual recognition across member states? Eric?
Yeah, just to quickly add on my colleague James. First of all, let me mention that mutual recognition agreements are already recognized under the African Continental Free Trade Area. So there is a Trade in Services Protocol which sits under the Article 10 for various professional services and also the movement of goods and services within the continent. So as we speak now, the African FCFTA Secretariat has already started developing some of the mutual recognition agreements. So for me, I see this as an opportunity, exactly what AFCAC presented in the work paper on this mutual recognition agreement. It's an opportunity to maybe to launch some of the pilot corridors of MRO mutual recognition. What I mean by there is that we might not immediately go for all the 54 countries, but we can take some pilots of aviation hubs. For example, taking of Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, and bring together these and try to see what professional services, maybe maintenance engineers and others, what professional services can we start with? And within the FCFTA Secretariat, because I know AFRA, FCFTA Secretariat, AFCAC already have a collaboration framework. AFCAC can come together with FCFTA within that protocol of trade in services, bring together the professional services, agree on the aspects, and develop these mutual recognition agreements, which once they evolve within the first corridors, the first countries, which actually are also those countries which have even some of the aviation training capabilities, once they have that agreement, and then they can expand to other professional services as it works. My second point is, apart from the mutual recognition agreement, the system of a common examination system. Because before you go to the mutual recognition, you have to have that mutual trust. So we need to have a standardized system of examining, if it is maintenance engineers, so that whoever you are an engineer within Africa, you have one common system where you can go and get examined. And once you get a certificate, you will obviously be trusted and recognized elsewhere in the continent. So those two aspects. The first one, this is something that can be done within this year, 2026, because it's already happening for other professional services. So my recommendation is AFCAC to immediately work with AFRA and the FCFTA to develop the first set of recognition agreements. And then, as we build the capacity, we also look at the issues of examination system, issues of aviation training as well. We have AATO, African Aviation Training Organization. AATO can play a role to coordinate aviation training as well, because without a standardized aviation training, more coordinated for the continent, we cannot have the mutual recognition as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Eric, what you have just done there is you have addressed your 1 minute last question when you said within this year it can be done. But for the remaining of the panelists, here is the question, and I will start with you, James. In one sentence, what is the single most important action that we have talked about we need to? Now we are saying that we will go and do. What is the most important one action Africa must take in the next 24 months to enable the recommendation that we have talked about to take effect?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the answer is the MRA, the Mutual Recognition Agreements. So AFCAC is going to take that bold step to bring together the regional safety oversight organizations that have already established the regulations that are common for different regions in Africa and move ahead to adopt the FAA and the EASA regulations or standards, and then we make that as a platform or basis upon which we are going to establish this mutual recognition of MROs in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laeke, you have been given an assignment. You had the AU saying that the 4 leading, and Ethiopia was mentioned. What is Ethiopian University going to do which will make this happen? Because we need to have leaders who can go and do something. What will Ethiopian Airlines University do?
Thank you, Peter. Well, ideally, what should have been done earlier, at least with the commitment we are getting from the policymakers, we have already embarked, but we'll expedite and continue to increase the global accreditation our facility has with EASA and FAA, so that by the time some sort of global standard is adopted for mutual recognition, we are there to serve all those who need the different aviation professional trainings. Thank you.
Our leading MRO, Daniel, what will you do which will increase the issue of trust? You have had the issue of independence, you have had this and so forth. But even with that happening, we are not saying go and divorce with Ethiopian Airlines, but what are you going to do as an MRO which will give confidence that our leaders are willing to see this new initiative being taken? Over to you.
I'm just echo what my friends are saying now and what is said so far for the last couple of days. Is just to have it a support. It's in one sentence, right? It's a harmonized and mutual recognition of the aviation regulation, and the certification across all African states will unlock so much opportunities for Ethiopian MRO for the African aviation requirements. So if we really focus on the harmonized and mutual recognition of aviation regulation and certification, then I think that will unlock so much opportunities to be utilized across Africa. So the Banjul Agreement is a kind of an example that we take that an oversight of safety is there. So if we just disseminate or expand that kind of safety oversight program, and if the AFCAC is, of course, its coordinative nature is there as what it is discussed today, then I hope the harmonized and mutual recognition kind of regulation agreement will be easy for the continent, and that will benefit the MRO as well, the regional operators. Thank you.
Santiago, as you go back home, what parcel can Africa expect to come from your region, which we can learn from? What are you going to do practically, which can be of assistance immediately?
On an initial stance, I believe, of course, ALTA is more than open to create those bridges regarding any lessons learned that we can bring from our region already walked. But it's also, I don't know, on a more practical stance perhaps, taking advantage of those mutual recognition agreements that you've been speaking of. I would encourage you to also take it to a practical level and try to create out of those signing parties some business out of it, some neutral joint venture, bring some, I don't know, some external consultant that already knows how to create an MRO, and actually start creating economical benefit out of those mutual recognition agreements. I think that would be a practical way to look at it as well.
Okay, at this stage, we will take 2 questions from the audience.
First from Afra SG.
Yes, thank you very much. A very interesting panel. And there are a lot to do in the future when I hear what is being said. So I'm hearing that mutual recognition is something which can be implemented immediately. That's very good. However, I want to think on the long term. In other regions, they come out with joint airworthiness rules. JAR Ops, JAR 145, 147. I think Latin America, they have followed the same. If we do that, and if you comply with this, if I can say African airworthiness rules, that will not talk again about mutual recognition. It's automatic. So for the long term, I want to ask EU and AFCAC, can you spearhead the work to have African airworthiness rules in the long run? Thank you.
James?
The answer is affirmative. Yes, it's possible. Why? Because the groundwork has already been laid. In the continent, we have 6 regional safety oversight organizations that have already established common rules and regulations. So what is just remaining is to make 1 out of the 6. So remember, we started with 54. And out of the 54 states, we came up with 6 in the RSOOs. So what is remaining is to have 1 continental. And it's possible it can be done in the long term. Thank you.
AU, Eric? You are happy with that? Okay, thank you very much.
We have another question here.
Question? Yes, sir?
Okay. My question goes to Mr. Laeke. As a producer of the human resources needed for flight technicians and engineers, as well as to Mr. Eric from the African Union. And my question is the following. Africa, from its scarce resource, it trains flight technicians and flight engineers. You know, to have a dependable supply of MRO services on the continent, it requires trained, qualified, and licensed technicians. And whichever the meager number of professionals that Africa trained from its small resource, they are being poached by other regions because of better opportunities and better payments. And you know, Africa trains those people starting from the basic class, and it invested a lot on them. So it cannot afford to pay them as much as other regions are paying. So for that obvious reason, they go. So what strategy should be put from training standpoint as well as from the continental bodies standpoint to retain those scarce resources and to produce more, and also to have them retained within the continent so that they can ensure a continuous supply and service of qualified MRO kind of services in the continent of Africa? Thank you.
Mr. Laeke?
Thank you, Mr. Isaias. Well, while acknowledging that this problem is out there, what we have embarked upon as Ethiopian Aviation University is to increase our capacity to train more. And while doing so, as we know, most of the aviation-related trainings are expensive in comparison to other trainings. So trying to bridge that shortage of finance by arranging different scholarship opportunities with operators and financial institutions extending some sort of loan, so that many who are capable to be trained but lack the funding get the opportunity and join the aviation professional. So increasing the pipeline is one area we are working, and to that effect we are now doubling our capacity by building another training facility close by to where we are now. And of course, on the retention part, which is also important, we need to closely work with the HR department to put the value of why it matters to train, to retain an already qualified professional instead of always repeating the same process every 6 years, 7 years. And to that effect, of course, we are seeing some changes, the way we consider that resource pool. So hopefully, by combining both, increasing the pipeline and training more, and at the same time retaining what we have, will go a long way in keeping African MROs at least self-sufficient in the coming future. Thank you.
For the states, could we have some input on that question?
Yes, on the policy level at continental level, let me answer this in 2 points. One is on the exactly what Ethiopia Aviation University mentioned, is to train more. This is what we should advocate for, because the retention, you will not control those who will be taken away. But when they are taken away, how many are you remained with, and what capacity do they have? So for us to respond to that as a continent is to strengthen our AATO, because this is the main strategy. How can we strengthen AATO to be able to bring that capacity of the different aviation training organizations within the continent, make them as the centers of excellence for aviation training? If we agree within AATO, for example, that a training organization in Kenya is able to train, let's say, aircraft engineers in that, and the other one is able to do this, why can't we agree on those centers of excellence, make AATO stronger, and then we'll be able to have the mutual recognition, because the mutual recognition is not only for MROs. I see it even in aviation training. If we are able to attract people who have been trained within Africa to work in Africa, within that mutual recognition, then it will be possible. Because for maintaining those who have trained, they can still go, but how many are you remained with, and how can they be standardized and be capable to still serve you, and be able to have these countries, trusting themselves. And what if I have a job in Kenya, I've been trained, for example, in Kigali, why should I go out of the continent if I can get a similar job next, where I can see my family in 2 hours flight? So this is what I can say, that we need to be stronger for the AATO. Secondly, train more, so that those who can go can still, we can still remain with very good skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The debates will continue after the conference, but just in a concluding remark, What is clear from this discussion is that Africa already has the technical capability and certified MRO platforms on which we can build a common standard. The opportunity is now to unlock the capacity through mutual recognition, regulatory cooperation, and practical alignment. And the word there is alignment at the global level, as we heard from the states through AFCAC and AU. If we get this right, and we will, Africa will not only retain maintenance value, we will build a truly integrated aviation maintenance market. And may I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, the time for alignment is now. Thank you.